Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Well, a movie that has gotten a lot of attention lately is a movie called America. What would the world be without her? And it was produced by Dinesh D'Souza. He's also the gentleman that produced another movie that got a lot of attention called 2016 Obama. Well, we had the opportunity to talk to him the other day about the movie and just a lot of things in general. So join me now as we talk to Dinesh about the movie. Well, what an honor for us today to have a man that you're hearing a lot about all over the world, all over the news, and his movie is rocking the house. And we're delighted to have back with us today Dinesh D'Souza, and he is the producer of a film that is really doing quite a job out there called America, Imagine the World Without Her. Dinesh, great to see you, my friend. How are you handling all this?
Well, I think it's a very good thing. I mean, it seems at times that it's crazy and there's a lot of controversy swirling around the film, but it's why I made the film. In fact, the controversy about the film is also in the film. One of the things I do in the movie is I bring a lot of the leading critics of America, people who feel that America is the evil empire, or America's been an evil force in the world, and I let them rave and rant in the film. So in some sense, the surrounding debate is something that I anticipated, I expected it, I welcome it. It's kind of funny for me. I'm an immigrant defending America against Americans who are native born, who are railing and ranting about their own country.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it right there in the whole sentence. That's beautifully said. By the way, you're recommending this film for the whole family, right?
Absolutely. It's a film, it's PG-13 because we've got some scenes from the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, but it's nothing that you can't bring your 10-year-old to. They'll love it, and they'll find it very eye-opening. It'll help to inoculate them against some of the things that they're going to hear in school and in college. So it's a movie very much for the whole family.
Did it impact you when you were making it? Did it come out a little bit different than when you anticipated?
Well, the film is just very different. For most of my career, I've been an author, writing books. And so making films is new for me. I made 2016, the film about Obama that came out a couple of years ago. I'm very proud of this film. It's at a completely different level than 2016. It's a movie that has been rated by an independent group called CinemaScore with an A+ rating, which means that audiences love it. People are often on their feet with tears, applauding at the end. So it's thrilling for me as an immigrant to give people that kind of an intellectual, but also an emotional experience.
Well, you know, to get a few of the controversial things out of the way, first of all, I see where Costco put it back. and thanks to your supporters and those who wanted to see the film, but they just had to acquiesce and put it back on the shelf. So that says a lot, doesn't it?
It says a lot. It also says a lot, by the way, about the power of the ordinary individual. I mean, this was patriotic Americans who went to Costco, went to their website, walked into the stores, and basically said, listen, if you don't want to stock a book, if you're going to pull this immigrant's book defending America on the weekend of the 4th of July, well, sorry, we don't really want to shop in Costco. And so if you went on the Costco website, you saw hundreds of pictures of people complaining, cutting up their cards, walking into Sam's Club. So Costco was like, whoa. And I met with the CEO last week, and he could not have been more obliging, more repentant. He's ordered a whole bunch of new copies of my book, which, by the way, same title as the film, America, Imagine a World Without Her. And the book is now selling really well in Costco.
You know what's so interesting about this? I don't think anybody expected Costco to go political.
I don't think that, you know, this is a mystery to me why this even happened. They keep saying it was a business decision, but, you know, they pulled the film just the day before it was opening. They pulled the book the day before the film with the same title and the same cover was opening in 1,100 theaters nationwide. My book was also outselling Hillary Clinton's book, which is sitting in a big mountain at Costco, you know, unsold. So I don't get the business logic of that. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I can't think of any reason other than ideology for them to have done this in the first place. Although I do think it was a business decision to put the book back.
A real quick business decision. It's kind of like Coke going back to classic, you know?
Exactly. Consumer demand. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I was talking to the CEO, Craig Jelinek, last week, and he said, Dinesh, he goes, I've spent the last week personally answering thousands of letters and emails and protests from my own members. And that just told me that, wow, we're living in a new world of social media. You know, 10 years ago, if you were upset by this, what could you do? You'd have no recourse. Maybe write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper. But in today's world of social media, you can make, the individual has a lot of power.
All right, I want to come back to that, but first of all, let's get into the movie a little bit. Why did you do this? What are you trying to convey? What's your message here?
What's been going on is for 30 years, there has been something that I call the shaming of America. And that is that the progressive left has concocted a story about America. It's not a true story. It's a manufactured story, but it's conveyed to young people in schools and colleges. I encountered it a couple of decades ago, but that same narrative has now spilled out into the media, into Hollywood, into the elementary and secondary schools, national public radio. Even some of the mainline churches are perpetrating this narrative. It's sort of America the inexcusable. Now, having lived in a different culture, I can tell you the reason people are breaking down doors to come to America is that they know that this narrative is false. They know that America represents something good in the world. And in fact, it's hard for me to imagine the world without America. So I made this movie to counter that left-wing narrative, to give people ammunition for the love that they naturally feel for their own country. So if you watch this movie or read my book, you'll have a handbook of ideas and arguments and even emotions that you can use to fire back against the malevolent critics of America.
You know, social media, some of the talk shows, talk radio, and certainly Fox and other networks have been spending a lot of time now going back into America's founding. Isn't it interesting that ever since the shooting down of this Malaysia airline over the Ukraine, they've been airing little speeches from Ronald Reagan. I mean, we're trying to bring something back to America. Are you sensing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are intuitively aware that there are sort of two ideas of America that are jostling for dominance. One is, I would call it the spirit of 1776, and Ronald Reagan embodied that spirit. It's a can-do spirit. It's the idea that America is a force for good in the world. It's the idea that we should use our power carefully, but nevertheless, the world needs it. I mean, the reason the commercial traffic of the world today can move across the world's oceans is because of the U.S. Navy. Remove the U.S. Navy, and there'd be massive piracy on the high seas, Russia and China jostling for control. So people forget the role that America plays in the world. Now, there's a rival ideology that's anti-American. It looks at America as the bad guy. It's trying to shrink America's influence and power. And the remarkable thing is that this anti-Americanism is not coming from Venezuela or Iran or Russia. It's coming from inside America. And so people in America are now aware of this, and they're saying, hey, let's go back to the attic. Let's find the blueprints that built this building, that made America what it is, so we can understand better what's happening to us and to some degree what our president is trying to do to us.
Now, there's a big clash coming, and we're starting to see it, and you're calling it the spirit of 1776. Do you think that spirit has the capability of putting America back on its original track?
Absolutely. I think that that spirit beats in the heart of every American. This is a society built by immigrants with immigrant virtues. Immigrants are restless people. They're frugal, self-disciplined, deferred gratification. They rely on family, community, and faith. And what's happened is that now we have this new narrative, which kind of got going in the 1960s. Look, I can understand people are for or against the Vietnam War, but what the left did that is so corrupt is it took the Vietnam War and the anti-Americanism that came out of that war, it went back through American history and rewrote the whole story, going back to Christopher Columbus. So it was sort of one bad thing after another until the 60s came along to save us all. So this is their rigged narrative, and this is the lie about America that needs to be questioned, it needs to be skeptically examined, and it needs to be overturned.
All right, so the left, for the most part, seem to have advanced to the point where they're in control, and it's not working. So there is a pushback. I don't know where this is going to go, but it seems we got a president that's in complete chaos. We've never seen the presidency AOL like this before.
Well, it's a big difference. Jimmy Carter was sort of AOL, but that's because Jimmy Carter was a nincompoop. I mean, he was a bungler. Obama's not a bungler. Obama has an ideology that wants to shrink America. Now, that's not because he's a pawn of some, he's not a traitor. It's not because he hates America. He just has an ideology that sees us as the bad guy. I mean, imagine if you and I lived in Nazi Germany and we saw the impact that Nazi Germany was having in making the world worse and also harming Germans. We'd say, look, let's try to shrink Germany. Let's try to bring the regime down. Let's try to curtail and control this country's power because its power is being used for bad and not for good. So with Obama, he looks at America. The reason he does the apology tour, the reason you never get the sense that he's proud and happy to be an American, even though his life is made possible in America. If he lived somewhere else, he was born in Kenya, he'd probably be living in the hut right next to his brother George in the Huruma slum of Nairobi.
Yes. So why is it people like yourself, an immigrant coming in here, I mean, your upbringing was very poor, and you come into America and you see the advantages that America affords you to make it, and you've done it. And why is it the people within are putting it down?
Not because they're putting it down because they have a plan. And here's their plan. They don't like the fact that this is an entrepreneurial society where people who generate new things, like Steve Jobs makes an iPhone. Now look at a guy like Obama. Could he make an iPhone? No. He can't even put up a website. So he doesn't have the entrepreneurial skills to succeed in an entrepreneurial society. But Obama has other skills. He's a political demagogue. He knows how to mobilize envy. He's a resentment organizer. He knows how to activate the mob. What he wants to do is transfer power in society away from entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs and toward sort of resentful politicians and community organizers like himself. So he's using the big shame narrative to put Americans up against the wall so he can justify the government coming and taking their money and their stuff.
Now, you discovered a lot of this when you did the film 2016, Obama's America. I mean, you actually went back to his roots and you figured out just who this person really is.
Yeah, I was able to go to Indonesia and Hawaii and Kenya and sort of enter Obama's world and to some degree Obama's psyche. What I found remarkable when I was down there at the Obama family homestead, talking to his grandmother, meeting his family, interviewing his brother George, is I'd ask those guys, I'd say, hey, who's been down here to interview you? CNN, Time Magazine, CBS News? They're like, no one's been down here. You're the first guy to come down here, Dinesh. So I realized, wow, I'm not an investigative journalist, but here I am. I'm sort of following the biggest story in the country, if not in the world, and the media isn't really doing its job.
All right, I got to take a break. Before I do, quickly, is he a citizen?
Obama's a citizen. He was born in Hawaii. I think the irony with Obama is I'm a third world guy who loves America. Obama's an American-born guy who's embraced a third world ideology.
All right, very interesting. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with Dinesh D'Souza.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Hi, we're back today, and our special guest is Dinesh D'Souza, and of course he's authored quite a few books, but right now we're talking about his film that's in theaters across America. There's a picture of the book on the screen for those of you watching on theDove TV. Let me encourage you, first of all, go to Costco, get this book, and thank him for putting it back on the shelf, and then see the movie. It's a movie that's been produced for all members of the family. And it's it's about America in a way that perhaps you haven't looked at it before. And I just want to commend you again, Dinesh. Again, thank you for your time, and thank you for sticking your neck out and doing this. I know that you're getting banged around pretty much, but you look okay.
I'm still in one piece, despite the banging. Look, the left is upset about the film because it's taking on their storyline. They've worked really hard for 3 decades to manufacture this sort of elaborate story of American shame. They've been using, the line I use in the film and the book is that the shaming of America is necessary for the shakedown of America. But what we do in the film is we go beyond the leftist argument. We look at the sort of 2 big pillars that built America. And by the way, those pillars are entrepreneurship on the one hand and Christianity on the other. The spirit of entrepreneurship, which creates wealth. But Christianity also creates the character and the community and the sense of family and the basic decency of the ordinary American, which is really a wonder to behold. Most places in the world, people get really cynical. But here in America, there's a kind of a goodness and aspiration to get it right. The left shamelessly exploits that. But on the balance, it's a very good thing that Americans have.
All right, so do you think the faith community is waking up to the fact that, hey, wait a minute, we have allowed ourselves to get pushed into a corner. Can we gracefully push back?
This is the problem, is I think that many Christians believe that this is a political argument. We can somehow stay away from politics. This doesn't really involve us. And what they don't realize is that what the left has done is taken the church and implicated the church in all the crimes of America. That the missionaries worked hand in hand with the conquistadors to steal the country from the Indians. That churches in the South apologized for slavery. That the churches were part of the American alliance to promote American exceptionalism and defeat Mexico and take half of Mexico. That even today, the churches are part of holding up the American structure and making America a force for evil in the world. So Christianity is under attack, whether we know it or not. The only question is, are we going to let them overrun it? Or are we going to step back and say, well, wait a minute, this is actually false. Far from supporting the conquistadors, the missionaries were the people who are fighting for the rights of Native Americans. They're the ones who went and complained to the Spanish crown. There was a huge debate on the question of whether American Indians had souls. The Spanish government decided that they did, and it was unjust to enslave them. This history has been carefully erased by the left from our textbooks to make the church and Christianity look bad. We're telling the other side of the story. So if you read my book, watch the film, you'll find yourself becoming kind of a dangerous American. Why? Because you now have the ammunition to fire back.
Well, we're seeing it. Hobby Lobby. It's a win. Can we sustain it?
Yes, we can, because the whole narrative relies on lies to hold it up. The moment people see the other side of the story, they go, wait a minute, hold on a second. I didn't know that the Native American tribes that had the land had themselves taken that land by force from other people. I didn't know that there were more than 10,000 black slaves in the South that were owned by other blacks, owned by 3,500 free black slave owners in the South. Why haven't I been told this? I'm not saying it changes everything, but it certainly changes something. Somehow the left has concealed this from us. It has sold a bill of goods to people, especially to young people. So once you have the corrective narrative out there, it's very eye-opening and it's very liberating.
Okay, let's fast forward into what's happening now. That we have a president that seems to be AWOL, but more importantly, he seems to be violating the Constitution, abuse of powers. However, and we're spending most of our time in defense mode. We can't seem to stop it. We can't find the avenue to get in front of this thing and slow it down.
That's because far from being really AWOL, what Obama is, he's actively involved in doing the things that he's doing. He's actively involved in undermining our immigration laws. He's actively involved in shrinking American power in the Middle East. He's actively involved in slashing our nuclear arsenal. Look, who can do it if not him? He's the commander-in-chief. He doesn't control the nuclear arsenals of Iran or China, but he sure has power over our nuclear arsenal. So it's not that Obama's gone to sleep or just playing golf. When he isn't playing golf, I'd rather he play golf more, because when he's actively involved in doing what he's doing in the Oval Office, he's doing more harm than good.
Is it really just him, or is he hooked up with a team of people doing this?
Yeah, it's not just him. And in some ways, this is the widening of the scope. In 2016, I focused just on Obama because I felt there was an untold story there. But in the new movie, I make this point. I say, look, no man can unmake or remake America by himself. He needs a vast movement, not just in politics, but in the culture. And then I use this line. I say, Obama did not create this movement. It created him. So we have to be aware of this vast progressive movement that is at work, not only in government, but also in media and education and so on, because ultimately it's a much wider battlefield than just the battlefield of politics.
What do you think about this immigration mess?
It's a horrible mess, and I think that the problem is not immigration versus non-immigration. Look, I'm an immigrant. I favor America having a generous immigration policy, but we want immigrants here who reflect the spirit of 1776, who want to pull the bandwagon and not get in the bandwagon. The problem with Obama isn't that he wants immigrants. He wants immigrants to come here, jump into the bandwagon, collect welfare benefits, and get free education and free medical care, while the rest of America pulls the bandwagon. That's something that no Americans support, including Democrats. And so Obama has to do it surreptitiously. Oops, they're here at the border. Gee, I had nothing to do with it. Oh, really? Well, what else has changed? Are there revolutions in Central America that are sending hundreds of thousands of people here? No. What's changed is not over there. What's changed is right over here. It's our policies that have changed, that have signaled to these people in Central America and Mexico, hey, come on over, because we're not going to do very much to stop you.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. Now you got Rick Perry going to do something we haven't seen before. We could be seeing a conflict between a state and the federal government and how the border is going to be controlled.
I mean, think about that. States are trying to police the border because the federal government won't do it, and the federal government is trying to combat the states and prevent them from policing the border. So, you know, this situation is kind of out of control here. You'd never see this kind of lawlessness being promoted by the commander-in-chief himself and by his army of minions. I mean, Obama's the Pied Piper, so he's got the leftists following him mindlessly because he's their leader. But at some point, they have to realize that he's leading them off a cliff. And I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago. Even Hillary is beginning to go, whoa, maybe I want to start pulling away from this guy because he's such a disaster.
All right, so we got the Israel crisis going on, and we don't seem to have a foreign policy right now under this administration. This is a big question, and if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But as a result of doing 2016 and where you are today with America and Imagine the World Without Her, do you think he, in his heart of hearts, he's a Muslim that practices the Islamic faith versus Christianity?
No, I don't think so. I think that Obama is non-religious. I think he doesn't have a religious bone in his body. The same was true of his dad, who was born a Muslim but became a rabid atheist. So the problem is that if you see America as the bad guy, you're going to see Muslims fighting against us in Afghanistan and Iraq as freedom fighters. So it's not that Obama is a secret Muslim. I mean, do you actually believe the guy prays 5 times a day? I find that hard to believe. No. He probably would be a better guy if he was a Muslim. I think that he's someone who detests religion. He sees Christianity as complicit with the American story of conquest. So as a result, if he embraces Christianity, it's going to be the Christianity of the liberation theology mode, the Jeremiah right, the goddamn America, that kind of stuff. So that's Obama's ideology. And once we begin to put on those spectacles, we can begin to understand him much better.
And yet it doesn't seem he's got Israel's back. He's got more of the Middle East back than he does Israel's back.
Absolutely. That's because if you see America as the bad guy, you're going to see Israel as our little pawn in the Middle East. So if we're the great Satan, Israel is the little Satan that's doing our bidding. So yes, I think Obama does see Israel as the bad guy. He is hostile to Israel. And so it's not that we don't have a foreign policy. Our foreign policy is undermine Israel, undermine our allies, and let our adversaries consolidate their power. And that's exactly what's happening.
Dinesh, I know you love America, and you made this movie to save America. What can we do to turn her around?
Well, on a very small scale, I mean, we build piece by piece. What we're trying to do is plant, if you will, a flag, a faith-based flag, a conservative flag in Hollywood, which is right now the fully owned monopoly, if you will, of the left. So you can really help us by taking your family, using your social media to get the word out. We've already put 1 million people in the theater to see this movie. The more that the movie gets out, the wider will its DVD distribution in the fall. We'll be able to show it on campuses around the country. So we have the vehicle to get the message out. You can help us by supporting it. And by reading the book, it's going to equip you with ideas and arguments to take it to the next step. This won't be solved in one shot, but the first step is see the movie, get the book.
Good. Do you see a turnover in Congress coming up in November?
I see a big change coming. There's a kind of a storm brewing. Obama's so arrogant and narcissistic that he's kind of oblivious to it. That's a good thing. Although he's normally a strong campaigner, I think he's essentially in his I'm the greatest mode, and he'll be very surprised by what happens in November.
Hillary in or out in 2016?
I think Hillary wants to be president, and I think she would be a difficult and formidable candidate. I, for one, would not underestimate her. We have her in the film. In this movie, America, Imagine a World Without Her. We don't have Hillary now. We have young Hillary. And we show, just as in 2016, we showed the formative years of Obama, how he became, if you will, the character that he is now. Similarly, we show the formative years of Hillary and how she became hooked up with a guy named Saul Alinsky, kind of a gangster type who admired the mafia, learned a lot of his political tactics from the mafia, and has very close ties to Hillary going way back to the time she was in high school.
Wow, fascinating. Well, the movie is called America, and Imagine the World Without Her, and so is the book. And you may want to check the book out at the bookstores, and in particular, if you're out at Costco, thank him for putting it back on the shelf and go to the movie. Dinesh, I know your time is tight. Thank you, my friend, and thanks for what you're doing. What's in the future? What do you feel like the Lord's leading you to do next?
Well, I will certainly do a film that comes out in the year 2016, the election year. But I also want to do a great apologetics film, a film making the case for God and Christianity. There have been a lot of films that tell the stories of the Bible, but I don't believe there's been a great apologetics film. If C.S. Lewis had lived, he would do it. We don't have C.S. Lewis, we have us. And so that's going to be one of my dream projects down the road.
All right, thanks for being with us, my friend.
My pleasure.
All right, there he is, Dinesh D'Souza. Well, if you haven't seen the movie, you may want to check it out. Well, let's kind of put things back into perspective, and we're going to have a personal Bible study with one of my favorite guys, and that is Dr. Gene Getz is going to be with us, and we're going to go into the LE Bible and have a little lesson coming up in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back. Always a delight and an honor, quite frankly, to have with us today our good friend Dr. Gene Getz, and he heads up the Life Essentials Study Bible. If you don't have one of these, you're just flat missing out. I think it's one of the great resources of our day, and they're available in the bookstores, or you can go to lebible.com, get one there. And in fact, there's a new website. Is that right, Gene? BiblePrinciples.org.
That's right. Yes, we are. We think that'll be a little easier to access.
Okay, BiblePrinciples.org is the new website. BiblePrinciples.org, and you can check out the Bible there. It's a terrific tool, and between Genesis and Revelation, there's about 1,500 plus QR codes in the Bible, and you just take your smartphone or your tablet, and if you have a QR reader, and most of those QR readers are free, you just run it over there, and it pops up, and
man, one woman. To live accordingly to God's wisdom, we must be committed to monogamy in marriage, which was God's perfect plan when he created Eve for Adam. Here's Dr. Gene Getz to explain this principle.
And that's what happens. And we call him a genie in the Bible. He pops up.
I love that. Tell your team I appreciate their creativity while we're talking.
Yeah, well, it's either that or they fall asleep during our sermons, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put that up one of these days. We'll let you see it there.
I just prefer to say they're multitaskers.
Oh, okay, we'll go with that. Anyway, our production team in the Dove control room put together a little visual Photoshop deal where they got Gene popping up out of the Bible and holding a tablet, but that's actually what he does. He pops up on video when you run the QR code, and for the next 8 to 12, 15 minutes or so, he's giving you a video Bible study, and it's a tremendous resource. So let me encourage you to check it out. All right, so today's topic is monogamy, huh?
That's right, yes, and it's ironic, of course, that comes from the proverb that was written by Solomon, a beautiful statement about drinking water from your own cistern, and he goes on to explain, and obviously he's dealing with sexual intimacy as it relates to marriage, one man, one woman. Ironic that Solomon wrote that, and I think probably he did so when he was in the will of God and married to that beautiful, beautiful young Jewish girl he describes so specifically and sensitively and beautifully in the Song of Solomon. And of course, we know what happened to Solomon. I mean, once he became king and got into that particular role and with the world around him and the way that kings lived, first thing he does is he marries a pagan Ammonite, and then he marries the princess of Egypt, and then it goes on from there, and marrying many foreign women, and that, of course, was the whole foundation for his ultimate destruction. But I think basically the principle that I state here, Perry, just takes us all the way back to God's plan from the beginning, when God made Adam, and then he created Eve from Adam, brought them together, And then the principle is, for this reason, a man will leave father and mother and be joined to his wife, not to a girlfriend, not to a significant other, certainly not to someone of the same sex. That is not what God created. And of course, sin entered the world. God tolerated polygamy in the Old Testament situation, though he warned against multiplying wives for kings. And of course, when Jesus came, he brought us right back to the creation story of when he said, for this reason, a man shall leave father and mother and be joined to his wife, and let no man put asunder. And then, of course, the Apostle Paul, when he's dealing with leadership and establishing churches in these pagan areas, and Ephesus and Crete, one of the great qualifications right at the top of the list is a man is to be a man of one woman. We translate husband of one wife could be a man of one woman. This is God's ideal. And when we depart from that, when we move away from that into the culture and the direction of our culture today, I think it's the beginning of deterioration and downfall. And great interview, by the way, with Dinesh and the movie on America. And he deals with that whole situation as being a very important factor in what's happening in our culture, and it's departing from the basic values that we were committed to as a nation. At least we were committed to the values, the Hebrew Christian values, which is the foundation for our society. And of course, we moved away from that. And that is a very significant thing, I think, in terms of what's going to happen to our culture ultimately, and unless we reverse that trend.
You know, Gene, I've heard a lot of references to monogamy and marriage biblically from Genesis and primarily out of Corinthians. I have to say, this is the first time I've seen Proverbs 5 is selected. Why don't you walk us through that?
Well, basically, here he says, verse 15, drink water from your own cistern, water flowing from your own well. A beautiful symbolism, and speaking metaphorically, should your springs flow in the streets, streams of water in the public squares, they should be for you alone and not for you to share with strangers. And obviously, it's dealing with a one-man, one-woman relationship, in marriage, a committed relationship. And in today's world, boy, I think we've really got to commit to that, because, one of the interesting things is that people who violate that principle within our culture particularly, commit adultery, have, women, multiple women, violate their marriage vows. One of the significant things that I've seen in ministry is those people lack integrity, and they will lie. They will look right straight into a camera and lie. I did not. And you know the end of that sentence, which is, by the way, going to come up and haunt Hillary in this particular situation right now, and it is. But that was a lie. Admitted it was a lie. Well, I have seen again and again and again in my ministry for many, many years that a man who is not loyal to his wife, who commits adultery, will also lie. He'll look straight in your eye and he will lie. And so, it shouldn't surprise us that that's the beginning of cultural deterioration.
All right. There's so much here. First of all, we had a story earlier on our news, Gene, that the millennials are not looking, even considering marriage till perhaps their late 30s, early 40s. Living together, no big deal. But the commitment of marriage is being delayed and delayed and delayed. So now we have these common law marriages. The problem, and of course you know the whole battle with the homosexual argument. They're trying to cut and paste scripture to accommodate what they want the scriptures to say. So we're in a real battle over this issue. As clear as the Bible is about monogamy, one man and one woman, we're being forced to go silent on the issue because we don't know how to really defend it. What would you say?
Well, I think we can easily defend it from the scriptures in relationship to teaching the Word of God, and I think we need to do that on a very regular basis. I think we just need to pray that that we're not going to be silenced, from a political point of view, like in some countries, like in Sweden and so forth, where people aren't even allowed to read, Romans chapter 1, which, by the way, we'll be looking at in our next segment. But the fact of the matter is that the Word of God is clear. But the amazing thing, Perry, as a pastor, I've had couples sit and listen to me teach that truth. And because they love me and I try to speak the truth in love, they'll say, "Great message, Gene, thank you. We know that we need to deal with this issue." And they keep coming back, and somehow they justify it, they rationalize it, they hear the truth, and somehow it doesn't seem to penetrate. But at the same time, we've got to keep speaking the truth, and we've got to make it clear what God has designed. And you've mentioned the trend among the millennials, and they, even as believers, they are justifying this relationship in their mind, and of course also redefining the sexual relationship, and defining certain sexual acts as not being really sex. Again, is very deceptive. It's rationalization. And I think one of the greatest contributors to what's going to happen ultimately in marriage relationships, because that spills over eventually into a marriage, and that's why we see so many divorces. They're not taking this whole concept seriously, this lack of commitment. And then you put that together with pornography and all of those influences in our society, we're heading into a storm here, which I think is just one part of what Dinesh was talking about in terms of America.
All right, let me take a quick break, and we can continue on with this as you slip over into the New Testament, as you said, and we'll be taking on Romans 1, verses 18 to 32. You may want to check that out with our good friend, Dr. Gene Getz. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back with Dr. Gene Getz, and let me tell you, they got a new website now, so if you're interested in obtaining one of these Bibles, and let me recommend that you do, check it out at the bookstores and the Christian bookstores here at Evangel, or Discount Books out in Jacksonville, or you can go online, BiblePrinciples.org, BiblePrinciples.org, and check out the Life Essential Study Bible. It is a tremendous tool. I can't say enough about it. And from Genesis to Revelation, what Dr. Gene has done is sat down and has recorded miniature Bible studies on video and then put them to QR codes. There's about 1,500 QR codes from Genesis to Revelation. And you can pull it up on your QR reader on your smartphone or your tablet. And there he is. He just pops up on a video screen and he gives you a great Bible teaching. And by the way, as we talk, he is going through these and updating them, so you won't know that, but you're getting the latest because he is working on that. And this tool is being used literally around the world. And let me see if I can demonstrate it for you here real quick, because we're going over to Romans chapter 1 right now. We're dealing with sin's devastating results out of Romans 1, starting at verse 18. Let's see if I got it here.
Sin's devastating results. In view of the power of sin, we should not be surprised how human beings progressively violate God's moral laws and suffer the consequences. Here's Gene to explain this principle.
Now here, Paul.
And there you see him. He pops up on a video with a clean shirt. And
a different shirt. They're always clean.
And he walks you through these principles. And I tell you, for those of us who live pretty busy lives, I tell you, Gene, it's refreshing to go to bed at night and have you give me a personal Bible study and have that on my mind as I go to sleep. All right, so today, kind of following in with what we talked about earlier, take us over to Romans 1. What's your lesson here?
Well, basically, let me say something, just sort of set that up in terms of what you mentioned earlier in terms of people being able to access these videos. I got an email from a lady just last week who just happened to find reference to the Bible on the web in southern India.
Wow.
And she wrote me. She took the time to find out where she could write to say, you know, I grew up in this pagan culture. I grew up in a situation that was just horrible. But she became a Christian. She found this Bible. Her husband miraculously let her buy a copy of the Bible. She was looking at the videos, and it was changing her life. Well, you can imagine how that encouraged me, that here's a gal out of that culture being able to watch these videos, have that Bible. But the reason I mention that story is that she's living in the midst of a culture that is pretty much in that situation related to what we see in Romans 1. I actually believe that in Romans chapter 1 is Paul is addressing what was happening in the Roman Empire. But I also think that in God's scheme of things, through God's revelation, what Paul was doing, it was summarizing all of history, going back to what happened following the fall, going back to the time of Noah, going back to the time of the kings of Israel and Babylonia and the Assyrians, and on up into the Roman world, and then it's prophetic as you move on through church history, because you see that it's a picture of what happens to society when they no longer attain God in their knowledge. And we just see a progression of degenerative activity, particularly in terms of moral values, which erodes the whole foundation of that society. And so that's what we see here in Romans chapter 1.
Wow. All right, so you think that's where we are today as a culture?
I think we're in the process of it. You notice that, and I'll just summarize, basically what you see is that 3 times it says God delivered them over to. And he's describing an immoral, particularly a moral breakdown. And the first thing that he gave them over to was cravings of their hearts to sexual impurity. And as he describes that, that's heterosexual immorality. And then the next step downward is he gives them over to degrading passions, which Paul very specifically defines as a downward step in culture to not heterosexual sin, but homosexual sin. And then the last step, he delivers them over to a worthless mind, and he lists all categories of evil that come out of that deterioration. Now, where are we in that process? Well, I thank God, you know, the Lord said to Elijah, when he was just totally depressed, he said, there are 7,000 that haven't bowed the knee to Baal. And you look at our culture, you know, that's symbolic of all of those people in our culture who would agree with what Dinesh said earlier in terms of our values, that we must commit ourselves to the basic values of Scripture that are outlined within the Judaistic and the Hebrew and the Christian culture. So we have patterns of it that are definitely happening, and they're very significant movements where we are saying there isn't such a thing as heterosexual morality. That's up to you. There isn't such a thing as being wrong in terms of who you love, in terms of same-sex relationships. And then looking what's coming out of all of the pornographic aspects of this, look at the latter passage there, paragraph in Romans, where there's abuse and murder and destruction, and you see all of the evil that grows out of sexual deterioration, rape, and so forth. maybe we've just seen the beginning of this in our culture. It's a serious warning.
You know, I had Wallace Henley on quite a few times. I don't know if you know Wallace down there in the Texas area. He's over at the Second Baptist Church there, and he worked in the Nixon administration. And he says that culturally we are in an area of, one of the cycles we go through is refiner's fire. And he kind of thinks that now America could very well be there and slowly moving into the cycle where we remember. In other words, we begin to remember back what made America great. It's Christian purity and virtue and principles. And so maybe somewhere in there is where we really are. But down at the end of this verse, you say, is verse 32, it says, although they know full well God's just sentence, that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but they even applaud others who practice them. Boy, we're seeing that all over the place.
All over the place. Yeah, it is very prophetic, and I think that's what happens in every culture that has deteriorated. In terms of what you said earlier about refiner's fire, I could hope that's true. I hope that through the efforts of someone like Dinesh, who has a platform able to deal with some of these issues and the spiritual issues in the light of a larger context, which he's dealing, that people will wake up. I hope that's true. Time will tell.
I understand that. All right, so Gene, as a pastor, what do we do? Maybe one of the reasons we're not taking on sexual sin, or in particular pushing back on the seems to be aggressive, if not times militant homosexual agenda, is that our own camp is dirty. Say that again. We got sexual sin within the church, so that's why we're not pushing back.
Yeah. And I think that certainly, and of course what that says, Barry, is that anytime you see a movement in culture generally, it will spill over into the subcultures of our culture, our society, and as evangelical Christians, we're subculture. And everything that's happening out there, you can always predict it's going to spill over and impact our community, our society, our culture. And I can show you how that's been true in so many movements that have impacted the community. Now, at this particular point in time, the thing that's impacting and spilling over is this whole moral trend and this low view of sexual purity as God's defined it here in Scripture. And how do we combat that? We've got to combat this. Number one, starts here with those of us who are leaders, modeling in our families, to our children. It starts with the leadership of the church. It starts with teaching the Word of God, speaking the truth in love, helping people to really understand. Let's remember, it's the Word of God that is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, dividing, asunder. And that's why I'm so committed to this concept of getting the Word of God into people's lives. And by God's grace, I'm devoting the rest of my life just to getting the message of the Word out, because it's only the Word of God spoken in love through the power of the Spirit is going to change people's lives.
Well, you do it very, very well. Thank you, Gene. And again, let me just say their new website is BiblePrinciples.org. Check out the Life Essential Bible. What an incredible asset and tool and resource, full of these QR codes with these principles put on video. Gene, thank you, my friend. Blessings to you. I consider it an honor to have you every time you're here, and best to you. Let's stay in touch. Can't wait to our next Bible study.
Thank you. Hey, it's a privilege, honor. God bless.
All right, God bless. All right, Gene Getz. Again, check it out. BiblePrinciples.org. That's their new website. BiblePrinciples.org, and order yourself up one of these Bibles. You will not regret it. God bless you. We'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.